have to also hit the start stream button for it to work. Isn't there a macro that just does all of this? Be there in just one sec, everyone. We're just getting all set up here. Oh, sound effects. Look at that. All right. I think we're about ready, Ken. Let's get into it. Oh, boy. Wrong thing. Got so many things to click on in here, huh? Oh, welcome back. Welcome back. Oh, you know what I forgot to do, of course? The script. Well, welcome back, everybody. I get that. You know, one of these days I'll figure out how to get
You have done this for 30 plus shows. You should be able to wing this.
Yeah, I can wing it by now, I guess, though.
All right.
But welcome back, everyone, to Creative Briefs. It is the third of our 3 shows that we run here every week, where we discuss topics around the creator economy and increasingly around the Web3 ecosystem. Just in case you are not following along, this is December 17th, 2021. This is episode 19 of Creative Briefs, along with another 20-something on the Creative Economy interview series. And another bunch of hours. Yeah, we're almost 50 episodes this year, in case you haven't tuned in previously. But head over to our website, creativeeconomy.com, and you can find all the archives. We do 3 shows a week. This is probably our last. This may be our last show for the year, I think. But on Tuesdays, we have office hours, Creative Hours. On Wednesdays, we have the Creative Economy, which is an interview series. And on Fridays, this show, we have the news. So we cover all the hot news going on from the past week. Do give us a follow if you don't mind. We are Creative Economy almost everywhere. YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Flipboard as well. So we appreciate the follow. We do have a Slack as well. So if you're interested in joining other creators and builders, feel free to head over to our Slack. It's at bit.ly/created-slack if you're listening. And of course, you can scan the QR code if you're watching. We are also doing an AMA drop. So AMA is the official coin of our show. We use it to build our community and to sort of reward all the great contributions that our fans make. So feel free to head over to the pinned tweet in the space to grab some free AMA. It's free money. Or if you're watching, of course, once again, scan that QR code. So Ken, what's going on this week?
So as we are wrapping up the year, it seems like a lot of the news is kind of dying out or hibernating until 2022. But there are some things that were at least one thing that was pretty surprising, I would say. But it's exciting, surprising, right? And then there's another one that's, I think we can kind of go into more of a deep dive. I think this is it's an issue that faces all aspects of tech, but it's kind of notable specifically for the creator economy. But we'll get to that in a little bit. But first of all, let's dive in let's talk about Facebook news, right? So Facebook and all their different properties, Facebook, Meta, whatever you want to call them. So they're not shy about rolling out updates left and right. And so their update this week is that they're going to launch a feature that is copied from basically a straight copy from TikTok, and it's called Reels Visual Replies. So those that are fans of Instagram Reels or avid users of them, I've not really composed anything using Reels or even Instagram stories or whatnot, but Instagram Reels is now, well, if you are a creator and somebody posts a comment, you can embed that in as a sticker into your reel. So what you're saying is like, oh, okay, the ability to add a user comment to a video. If a user comments on the reel you've posted, tapping the reply button will add a sticker of the comment into a new reel, which you can then move around or change its color. So it's all a matter of, I guess it's like creating a threaded chain so to make it a little bit more engaging, a little bit more interactive. And the amount of time that you spend on it, the more views you get and the more addictive that the real creation process could become. So this is not a big major story. It's just one of those, this is something that's coming to Facebook or has arrived to Facebook. And if you're a creator, nice to know. It's another copy of a TikTok. That's it. Just an update. So
Okay, what's next?
All right, Snapchat. A little update here. I know in the previous episodes what we talked about with Snapchat is in terms of their creator payouts, right? And everyone's done it. Facebook, Snap, TikTok, YouTube, Twitter to a certain degree, maybe even LinkedIn. And so this is just an update to them. So Snap has apparently paid out more than $250 billion to creators on its Spotlight program this year. Now, that's great for Snap, but to put it into context, $30 billion have been given out to creators by YouTube in over a 3-year period between 2018 and 2020. So, that's when you boil it down annually, 10 billion a year, versus $250 million. Snap has, if you want to put all things being equal, dollars to dollars, Snap has a lot more to make up for, but not bad for $250 million for 12,000 creators in its Spotlight programs. Now, there's obviously been a lot of shakeup in terms of Snap, in terms of how Snap pays its creators. At one point they would pay up to $1 million a day for Spotlight creations, but then they kind of pulled that back, I think, at the beginning of Q3, and then it just became very wish-washy and unknown. So, look, I think if they can, if Snap is is continually doing that and supporting creators, good on them. I don't know if you could necessarily do a straight comparison because one platform is obviously way bigger than the other, but it's an interesting benchmark for Snap. I mean, Greg, how would you stack up $250 million for creators? Would that be a good thing in your opinion?
Look, I think every dollar that a creator can make is a good thing. We've sort of riffed on this in the past. I think, this is sort of like these are either like patchwork things, right? To sort of reconcile for the fact that they're not rewarding creators well enough, right? Or these are defensive things where they are paying creators to hopefully keep them locked into the platform. I don't think, it in no circumstance is this sort of out of the goodness of their heart, right? Now you compare this to like a YouTube just has a straight up revenue share and they're like, great, we make billions of dollars, you make billions of dollars, right? And YouTube just pays out a ton of money. All these other platforms are sort of like catching up to this idea that creators should be earning revenue directly from the platform, and so I'm glad it's happening. It's I think a fundamental flaw sort of in the business model. They should just open it up and say like, great, we're just going to move to a participation model and like what we can monetize. And they need to figure out how they want to monetize. But in doing so, they would have, I wouldn't say necessarily a fair thing, but they would be at least, table stakes, right? If we're looking at Facebook copying features, why isn't anyone copying a monetization model? And I guess they're copying like the bad monetization version, the bad models, not the good ones.
Yeah, no, and you're right. I think there's obviously different angles to point of views to look at it, because on one hand, YouTube has this big, massive war chest. It's owned by Google, right? So it's this money making machine. Snap is a money making machine, but it's not hasn't been around as long as YouTube. Doesn't necessarily have that ad business model as YouTube has. So, all things being equal, great. This is a good opportunity for Snap. It's showing that they're $250 million is not something to say, oh, that's pocket change. In the grand scheme of things, when you think about it, yeah. But Facebook and YouTube are much, much bigger companies with much bigger market caps, right? And they're probably like 50 Snapchats over, right? They, multiply Snapchat by 50 times, and that's at least YouTube and at least Facebook. And TikTok, the same thing. But I think when it comes to the audience and the creators that Snapchat wants to cater towards, maybe that's starting to see maybe they're starting to see that come to fruition. And specifically, I think the goal maybe of Spotlight is to encourage creators to use their creative tools and their AR lenses, right? And according to this stat, from the company, Spotlight creators post 3 times as often to that section compared to when it launched a year ago. And 65% of those submissions use one of Snapchat's creative tools or one of its augmented reality lenses. So what Snap wants to do is not necessarily get creators, but also to foster this AR reality. That's redundant.
Well, Ken, that's a great point, actually. But like, you would think, like, why not actually incentivize that specific behavior, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I think they are in normal. I think normally they are.
No, they are normal, but I guess
AR.
well, maybe hopefully there's something going on behind the scenes, right? Because like, it would be great. Like, Snap has a potential advantage, right? Like, in a quote unquote metaverse oriented world, right? Like, where, they were the originators of like this really great AR technology or application, I guess, right? If they could start to apply that more broadly, I think they could win a lot of people maybe who turned away from Snap, over time. And it'd be great to see them do like an AR fund instead. And,
I think they may have done something like that in the past, but
a long time ago, maybe, yeah.
Yeah, and maybe this.
But you know what it was? Those were the branded ones. It wasn't like for a metaverse use case. I think it was like trying to get people to use like the stupid Coke bottle or whatever they were doing back then.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I think it's probably one of those cases where it was too early that fund emerged too early before that people started to adopt to that. So look, I think let's look back at what Snap Spotlight is a year from now, assuming that it is happening in by the end of next year. That 250 million are we going to see that double or triple or what? And worth paying attention to. So all right. Speaking of Snap, let's dive into its competitor, Instagram. Look, again, this is very similar to what I was saying at the very beginning of the show. It's not a big major update. It's just that according to sources that tell CNBC that Instagram now has 2 billion monthly active users. So this is an update from, I guess the last public update was in June 2018, where it topped 1 billion MAUs. So 3 years to get to 2 billion, not bad. Compared to, it took them 8 years to get to that first billion. But, with Instagram facing a lot of turmoil and scrutiny from Congress and regulators, and obviously through the Facebook papers, obviously that, it's understood why they don't want to necessarily brag or boast about this type of stuff. However, from the creator economy standpoint, looks like Instagram is still very much has a very commanding lead in terms of the amount of, audience that people can reach, and it doesn't look like it's going to stop. That growth isn't going to stop anytime soon. So
we'll see.
I mean, I think it's a nice little update, to see what's going on. But at some point,
yes, but
yeah,
much like Facebook was like impenetrable and quickly somehow now no one wants to be on Facebook. Is it unimaginable that people won't want to be on Instagram? No.
Yeah. Well, I wonder, right? Because it's like at some point prior to rebranding as Meta, and I was joking about this on Twitter. It's like, will we? At one point, right now it's like, oh, Instagram by Facebook, right? Or now it's like Instagram by Meta. At one point, are we going to start to see Facebook by Instagram, by Meta, right? Where Instagram now becomes the dominant business unit for whatever, for all of Meta, and as opposed to Facebook's the social network. Because it's like, I mean, yes, Facebook, the social network, still has about like I think maybe like almost 3 billion monthly active users. But Instagram at 2 billion, I mean, it's like, at which point do you start to see more of that upheaval? And then hypothetically, could Instagram have hit 2 billion had it not been bought by Facebook? $4 billion.
Well, we will see.
Yeah.
Instagram feels like very much in the rearview mirror to me.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about some shopping aspects here. I'm not actually sure how to even pronounce this, but Google's little incubator type of thing, incubator program, launched a new service called Qaya, Qaya.
I would probably go with Qaya. It's Qaya for anyone who wants to figure out or search for it.
Yeah, but it looks like it's a competitor to a Shopify, to an Amazon, to a e-commerce type of store, that's e-commerce platform that's working with creators. So let me quickly pull up my notes here.
Just for reference, Google's what's it called again? 120 Project 120. Is that it?
Yes. That's their Area 120. That's
Area 120. It's this internal kind of incubator at Google where they develop and create tools. They've made a number of different tools over the years, and honestly, I just really haven't seen any of them do anything.
Yeah. Well, look, so this is founded by Nathaniel Nadef Haffrey and his team and a bunch of Googlers. So it produces what Qaya does is offers personalized web storefronts that can be linked to a creator's YouTube merch shelf, as well as Google Shopping.
Oh, interesting. So it directly connects. So it's like
it's an internal Shopify.
Shopify
within Google.
Internal Shopify. Got you. Yeah. This seems like it also, I guess, competes with like Gemma and some of these other servers, even Cameo potentially, I guess, right? For monetizing.
But it kind of makes sense more from the Google side versus opening like more of like an open ecosystem. But I guess with Google, you can open it. It'll eventually be open to other integration platforms as well. So you can store up to 1,000 products on your storefront. You can host up to 1,000 products per storefront. You'll get a customizable URL, and you can share your link to other online profiles. It integrates with Google Pay as well as offering subscription, tipping, and one-time payments. It's free to use, but monetization is managed on a quote transactional basis. Who the hell knows what that means? It's a beta right now in the US. And if you're outside the US, you want to take advantage of Qaya, you can sign up on the wait list. Here's where it gets interesting for me, because I think this was like at Google I/O maybe 2 years ago. Executive Bill Reddy got on stage and was talking about the shopping graph, right? This is a, Google has all these different graphs, Facebook has all these different graphs, whatever. So what Google's offering is like, hey, we're going to be able to tap into the World Wide Web and gain access to everything and kind of bring everything together within the search. So what's happening here is with Qaya, my understanding is that you have the storefront. You obviously tap into this wide breadth of Google property technology, such as Google Pay, search, and shopping. Some that may not necessarily be as top of mind. Like, would you necessarily use Google Pay versus using Stripe or PayPal? Probably not. But it's that ease of use type of thing. And so you build on using Qaya, and you have the power of the Google technologies behind you to help promote your storefront. And obviously I doubt there would not be any integration with YouTube, and that would be a great boon for YouTubers who want to sell merch. So
it looks like a nice product. And it looks pretty well executed, honestly, but it still suffers like from like the classic. I don't know why Google products never go anywhere, right? Like most of these things just sit on the sidelines. They don't seem to, at least they're not making like massive Wave and Google Plus style level investments, right?
God, no.
To make these things come up, or it doesn't seem that way at least, right? But I think the interesting challenge is like, why when you own YouTube, right, and you create a storefront product, like why doesn't everyone like have it, right? And my guess is that there's still sort of we were talking about this, I think, on our show Tuesday when we were reflecting on the year, is that I feel like not everyone's still ready for half these things, right? It's not that there's something wrong with this, but getting to the point that you can articulate a product line, that you can articulate a course, that you've, produced the things or invested in the things that like allow you to have this kind of revenue, right? Like a lot of creators just haven't turned that corner yet, right? Like, most people are still figuring out like their content strategy. They're still figuring out, like what niche they want to be in, right? Like they're still learning how to sort of like deal with and interact with, a new and growing user base. And so I think for, to the extent that the emergent class of creators is likely still a class that is more informed about business than less informed, right? Like AKA I'm choosing it actively as a business or as a career. I think this may work. The question is like, will Google give up on it before it has the chance, right? Because we see this kind of happen all the time. These projects sort of just get abandoned.
Well, I think it might be a little bit misleading because it's part of the Google Incubator. Some people might think it's owned by Google. Like this is a Google product, like a Google Duo or Google Plus or anything like that. I understand. I took this like this is like, hey, I am just an entrepreneur in residence, so to speak, and I'm going and creating Qaya. But since my backers is Google, I am going to make that integration, right? So I think technically this could be considered as a standalone, like a Shopify, its own startup, like outside of the Google ecosystem, but very much favored towards that.
I hear you. But there are companies out there doing stuff like this. And like, even its domain is still Qaya.area120.google.com, right?
Yeah.
So I just don't know. Like, I guess I've seen too many of these, right? Like now, if you compare this, for example, to Twitter's strategy currently, right? Twitter's products are like actually in Twitter, right? Like, so, and maybe there's like some people that they're like gating a little bit of access to, which makes sense just from a beta testing point of view. But, and there's no guarantee any of the Twitter things are going to work either, right? But at least they're closer to the context, right, of it happening. So, like, as a creator, say, seeing this, I'm like, are you guys serious about this thing? Is it like for real then? Or is it just like an experiment and like, should I bother? Right. Like, because most people don't want more tools, I guess. Right. Ultimately, right. We'd rather consolidate. And, I know we're going to touch on Shopify later too. Wouldn't you just rather do this in Shopify, right? Like, which knows what's doing, and it gives you all the external benefit of like having an actual storefront. If you've gotten as far as like knowing you need a storefront, and you have things to sell.
But isn't that like a kind of like the age old question? Is like, do you want the best of all worlds, like to diversify your solutions, or do you just want to have a best of breed approach, right? It's like, do you want to just go with like a I want to use Google, I use Slack, I use this for all my different tools because you like that experience, or do you just want to use Microsoft Office 365?
I think solopreneurs and solo founders and small businesses ultimately don't usually opt for the best of breed solutions up front, right? Like you tend to grow into or find that you are frustrated by like a feature set inside of sort of an all-in-one solution. But it also means that you have to justify like the cost, the time, and the expense of operating sort of that best of breed solution. And then you also have to deal with integrations and connectivity to all of your existing systems, right? And so that's why I think it becomes challenging, right? Like nobody wants to use like the 10 best of breed tools as a solo person. Like I hate even us promoting our show. We have to use like 20 tools to just do the show, and it's overwhelming and it's a ton of work, right? And if we had a full team working on this, like, then I also like probably wouldn't care what tools they have to use as long as they're getting the job done. But I think, for a lot of creator businesses, which are small or solo in the organizations, having more and more tools is likely an impediment and probably scary to a lot of creators out there.
Good point. All right, Greg, this one kind of brings me to something your past, right? So there's a company called Notus, Notus. And so the headline, not us, Notus. Maybe it is not us. Notus. I'm saying it's Notus, but it's probably not us. So the headline reads, not us, I'll go with that one, wants to suggest the best ways to have influence and then scale it. So as soon as I read that headline, I'm like, that's Klout. That's Klout for the creator economy, I think. Then I further read down this article, and it kind of didn't really seem like it, but it almost is. So it's a little bit of yes and no. So the gist here is, and I believe they're taking it more from the brand side and the business side of things, where you can use this service, not us, note us, whatever, and it will help you find influencers based on specific specific signals, right? So they will use things like public speaking, looks at somebody's like, for example, if I want to, it would say, hey Greg, let's look at the interaction with Greg's fans and followers, looks at the retweets, mentions, likes, replies, and more on Twitter. And then there's an algorithm that produces, quote, a list of trending voices that brands can use to explore and filter. So it's a way to generate a list of influencers or people with influence, to say, hey, this is who you should reach out to because of your criteria for saying, hey, this is great, whatever. They're great at entrepreneurs or being an entrepreneur, or great at business or whatever. So it gives me a little bit of a Klout vibe to it.
Yeah, I could feel
is there
that.
a point for a Klout vibe right now? Do we need a new Klout?
Probably. Well, I don't know if we. Yeah, well, probably I would say so. I think like when we were building Klout way back, it was ahead of its time in some ways, right? And I also think it was probably handicapped just by like technology, right? Like the ability to sort of analyze and index the data at the levels that were needed were probably not all there yet. We did our best, right? Obviously, we were indexing billions and billions of data points. I just think like the technology suite has moved forward significantly in that time. Now, I think what we do need now is, for example, reputation matters more than ever before, right? We have like all kinds of traumas going on in the world, from fake news to sort of self-declared experts, and a ton of misinformation and disinformation out there. And so, I feels like that stuff is super relevant today, right? I also don't believe that we will ever move past the point per se that individuals will have influence or sway over how other people think, right? There may be more and more ability to be data driven in the things that we understand, but we will probably always be able to be quote unquote sold by someone that we care about or think is important or interesting, right? So yeah, I think Klout. I think there will be another Klout of some kind that does come out that actually tries to help provide some of that context. It's interesting to see though that 776 is I put a tweet in the nest, by the way, if you're watching, because to Alex Ohanian, I think, doing an interview explaining why he invested $1.25 million or invested in their $1.25 million round.
I think what the advantage here is, like, look, I think from a consumer standpoint, this is probably okay, right? I mean, like how Klout was had a very public facing version where you're like, oh, let's see, do I have more influence than Justin Bieber or Barack Obama or you, Greg, or whatever? Like there's that gamification type of thing, right? And you could certainly see how brands used Klout to reach these influencers. I remember there were different programs, activations that Klout partnered with. I was on the Virgin America one where they announced the new leg from San Francisco to Toronto, and there was this party where we hung out with Richard Branson and everyone else. So I can see for not us, this is where the advantage is, because I think what we've talked about on the show in the past in terms of how brand opportunities are important to creators to monetize. That's like a big part of how they make money. This could be an opportunity on the reverse, right? Because on one hand, it's like there's a lot of hustle from the creators to get these brand sponsorships. But what if the reverse, like brands want to like, I want to find somebody who can who can really promote our new phone, promote our new line of menswear or whatever. Like they're going to need to find these people, and there's a huge market. There's a huge group of creators. So it's like, how do you pick the pieces, and how do you find that evaluate them in a statistical manner? And maybe this is that tool that can help filter people out, perhaps. So I mean, from the enterprise
we'll
side,
see. I mean, look, there's going to be 1,000 takes at this. I don't
Oh, yeah.
I don't know that anyone's going to win here.
Yeah. All right. So Greg, you love NFTs.
I have NFTs.
Would you mint and would you sell your NFTs on Shopify?
So we tweeted about this yesterday because I this is a very surprising move, I would say. Just from a timing point of view, not because I didn't think
it makes sense,
happen.
but timing makes sense. But
I thought it would happen later. So I was just actually really happy to see it happen now, right? I think this adds a lot of sort of validation to sort of the space and the movement and the things that are happening with NFTs. I think it also provides, when we talk about certainly we've talked about this, but when I think about the challenges that Web3 has, and it was sort of in like a Twitter fight with someone about this earlier this week, I ultimately think it's a societal change in how we perceive things. And so the UI UX of the entire space, not like of specific tools, needs to improve to make it more accessible, right? And I think things like a Shopify entering the world not only makes it accessible, but also creates like the space for products to be sold through, right? Like, so they will figure out like how to help bridge people into sort of the crypto economies, right? And then they also can provide the products and a sense of safety, I would imagine, to a lot of consumers in the purchasing process. So this is just, I think, a great move on their part, to sort of embrace this earlier. It really makes sense if you think about it, though, like digital arts and products and goods, et cetera. Like, the NFT to some extent, one function is as a receipt, right? It's also a delivery mechanism for artwork or for other kinds of projects, data, et cetera, right? Why shouldn't you sell it this way? Right? Like, I mean, and I also think like to a company who maybe is diversifying their product line or diversifying their revenue streams, having all your revenue recognized and reconciled in one place is actually a very powerful concept, right? Because today, if you were to have to set up a wallet to then capture like sort of crypto purchases, you have a whole bunch of other work that you have to do to sort of like convert that to fiat if you're using it to say pay for your products or grow your business. I haven't seen how all this is implemented behind the scenes, but it will be very interesting to see if they're sort of able to also help with like the tax side, funds transfer and all the other bits and pieces as well. Shopify is a massive behemoth. So like them having this is like, it's just incredible, right? Because tons and tons of small individuals sell things, right? And I actually think this is probably even a threat to like something like Gumroad, right? Like where they were previously selling digital goods. I think like now you could say like, great, like we could just use Shopify to do that because I'm also going to sell my merch here. Or whatever it may be, right?
Yeah, no, you're right, and that's the point I was going to make. I think you look at like an OpenSea, you look at all these an OpenSea competitors. Right now, those are very much hardcore NFTs, right? And I think with Shopify, it's blending the offline and the online together because some people may have like. And we're talking about like, okay, creators will have like, okay, they have their traditional merch, right? Like, oh, buy my t-shirt, blah, blah, blah. But what about the small businesses, right? Those that are or artists like, hey, you want to buy an actual illustration or painting that I did, like something you can physically hang up onto your wall. But then you can, but what if you want to sell that as an NFT itself, right? It's like on one hand, one could go for way more than the other. Or it's like you want to build a community. So, but right now you don't. If you without this Shopify integration with this Shopify opportunity, you might have to do in two separate places, and you lose people. You lose potential transactions and sales. This kind of brings it all together. Now, this is not a full launch by any means, This
No,
is a
sure.
beta.
I mean,
And
it's a
yeah,
US only thing, and you have to apply to get into it, and you probably
yep,
need a store with a certain amount of volume before they're going to bother worrying about you.
yep. Well,
Um,
you can be a brand, artist, or creator. You have to be enrolled. You have to be a US based merchant. You have to, in Shopify Plus. So that's something to. I mean, that's largely the biggest thing. One thing that as soon as Toby, the CEO, tweeted this out, somebody that was one of the employees that worked on the crypto side tweeted out that this is going. They're trying to be blockchain agnostic, so they'll work with any blockchain,
Yeah.
Ethereum, and all these other things. So it doesn't. So they're going to be pretty open. I think they want to be like the Switzerland of NFTs. So they'll take everybody. So that'd be very interesting to hear. So we actually have some question or some speakers lined up from Twitter Spaces, and we'll give this a shot. Let's start with Chifo. Let's see, Chifo. Hello, Sheffo. My apologies, Sheffo. How's it going?
Oh, fine, thank you. No apologies necessary. I'm just enjoying the conversation. I actually began the application process, or I should say, I intended to do the application process, and then I was reading about like some of the entire requirements, but yeah,
I put my name in. Don't worry about it.
I mean, I put it in, but I mean, it's something that we're trying to figure out, like kind of how, we're not afraid of some of the centralized crypto opportunities, just because, a lot of times we're going to be talking about like a recipe. We're doing a cookie drop recipe, for example, and like that's not DeFi, and so it's a little less scary to put it in certain different places. And then obviously, brands like us, there's merch and just like easy to wrap your mind around stuff. So we're
tell us a bit about like what the cookie box is.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's our first kind of jump into the recipes. Not shilling, but that'll be Wednesday morning at 9. And like basically, we came in as like a profile thing just to kind of get our brand out there. And I'm a chef, and so I mean I'm jumping in head first to figure it all out. And I think everybody's ramp on the technology is different. I mean, I'm going pretty hard, but yeah, we've hired like real developers, and yeah, and so this is kind of like for us. I mean, we have every intention of putting out hundreds of these recipes and like working with all sorts of chefs, including like chefs in our organization, and then any other cool chefs that would want to work with us. And we can do basically any kind of breakdown in the wallets and anything like that. And eventually, like I would love to be on crypto.com and for similar type of reasons, low gas, really super easy entry fiat on ramps. Like you could buy these things with a credit card, that kind of stuff. So, I mean, for us, there's an amazing amount of revenue opportunity in the technology that's not even really out there yet.
Yeah, the thing I that I like that you started with, I guess, was just sort of like some of this tension that exists in the space, it seems today, right? Like there's sort of like the decentralized maxis, I guess, right? Where like if it's not decentralized, it's broken or it's wrong or whatever it may be, right? But I do think I personally still endorse like sort of a hybrid approach. I think like I'm still a big advocate of sort of Web 2.5 because as a technologist, right, the Web3 parts are really just fundamentally it's technology to facilitate sort of different kinds of interactions than we previously had in sort of like whatever Web2 is, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, again, you sound way more educated than myself, but I'm trying to look at some of those upcoming things, like, I think that the roll-ups are still super like clunky, but they will provide, I mean, they have like the worst user interfaces ever. I mean, that being said, like I have ZK Sync and I, all these things, and I like Immutable, but like Immutable, if you go to Immutable, like there's literally like buttons and like the HTML's coming through, like it's crazy. know, and so it's weird. It's weird. And, you know, for that reason, you know, we still love Ethereum, but like our profile pics are ridiculously expensive. And it's ridiculous. You know, I'd have to offer like high fives with Thomas Keller to get people to be buying these things, you know? And,
right.
And so again, that kind of goes to the recipe thing. You know, these are going to be on Polygon. They're going to be too matic. It's like anybody could go buy them. They're like smart enough to bridge, you know?
Right.
I mean, I think honestly, someone should just make like a massive like marketing, just like a messaging campaign, a PSA for getting people on Polygon. And that's not a shill for Polygon, but I mean, honestly, I think a lot of newbies and things like that, like, it's just going to be the easiest thing, especially for creators as well. And like Solana is super interesting, but I would have to hire an entire different dev team.
Right.
You know, and Solana is awesome, but like they get a lot of pushback in the community, which I actually kind of agree with. So yeah, I mean, you know, we're still trying to figure it out ourselves as a project. And it's like guys like yourself and spaces like this that really help. So thank you.
Well, we appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks. All right. You want to take another one? Why don't we have a couple, like a bit of time just for one more. Why don't we open it up to Seam, I believe. Seam, are you there?
Seam. Got 100 on that, so I think you did it right.
Woohoo! Oh, hold on. Wait. I added you as a speaker.
They have to switch to a different server when you become a speaker, so it takes a second.
You figure Twitter would have be able to do that, but
well, maybe Seam can't join right now, but
we go.
Oh, there we go.
Seam, are you there?
Thanks, guys. I got rugged all of a sudden. I don't know what happened. Who does that?
How's it going? What do you have to say?
Well, I'm actually not so surprised about Shopify's move. I think ever since Square went to block, we've been seeing a lot of companies recently get into the whole NFT space.
Right.
I'm particularly looking for. There's a TikToker, and I'll send it to you guys later. Maybe we can put it up as a pinned tweet. But she's looking at for example, what is the 3.0 version or blockchain version of Spotify? And I love where everything is going in some direction, right? But I'm also concerned with acquisitions, as maybe you guys touched on before I came in, but with Nike's acquisition of Artifact.
Wait! Don't jump the gun. That was our next article.
Yeah, that's our next story. We haven't done it yet. Don't worry.
And let me be quiet.
No, but please finish your thought if you have a chance.
This is a collaborative space, right?
Exactly.
So I always thought if we do something on a big scale, we wouldn't necessarily get acquired. We would partner. But that's me being incredibly ignorant to, what exactly the deal was between Artifact and Nike.
Right. Yeah.
So on that note, why don't we jump into that?
You have a story? Yeah, we'll share. We do this stream and video actually on my startup platform called Zealous. But so sometimes we're talking about things. I've been trying to share as much into the space as I can today as well. Go ahead, Ken.
This is one of those issues where we need to have multiple, like a single tool to kind of do everything. Kind of going back to what you're saying earlier, Greg.
If there was an API, we would be feeding this into the space directly.
All right. So as Seam kind of basically ruined our thunder, so to speak, the break, I guess the second biggest news is, in terms of the Web3 and the creator market, is that Nike has acquired Artifact. At first, when I saw this, I was like, "What? How do you even pronounce that?" Because it's literally RTFKT, and I'm like, I don't know what that spells. Somebody had said, "Oh, it spells artifact." I'm like, "Oh, okay, great." And I'm like, why would it a shoe company buy a digital art type of firm? Doesn't make sense. But then it's like, as you start to read it, it's like, okay, I guess shoe companies just are looking beyond just the physical item, right? Behind just the sneakers. And so, I mean, this is an acquisition. Artifact will still continue, but it's going to be an opportunity to help Nike get into the digital art space through, and likely through NFTs, and also to the metaverse, right? So not only does Nike want to dominate the physical shoe wear side, but it also wants to tap into the virtual and the I guess the metaphysical, if you want to get that deep into things. So I mean, this is kind of a pretty fascinating thing. I mean, we saw Adidas kind of go into the NFT space, but I think this is kind of like where Nike is like, hold my beer, we're going full bore. So if you're like, could we see, like, if you're in Facebook's Horizon World, whatever, if you're playing in Roblox, if you're playing Fortnite, or anywhere in the metaverse, are we going to start to see branded Nike wear on your avatar, or
Of course we are.
wherever you are? I mean, right now it's very ambiguous. They're very generic items, apparel, but now this is going to be like, now we're going to start to see more of the real world blend more into the virtual world. I mean, is this a good move for Nike, Greg? I mean, you're a man's apparel fan.
This is inevitability. I mean, there's no this is not it's not even a good move. I mean, I think it's just more of a, table stakes at this point.
Yeah.
I think, like, ultimately, this acquisition, there was some interesting chatter about, like, the right way, wrong way to get into sort of like NFTs, et cetera. I don't know per se that this is the best way, like acquiring everyone who's doing a great thing, maybe to Seam's point. But also we've seen a whole bunch of people just fall on their face. Like Pepsi took a load this week, or was it this week? Yeah, I think, for their mic drop thing. I think it's partially because, as brands tend to do, they follow along and try to, like, emulate what they think is interesting and just basically bastardize it with their version of stuff usually. I think why Nike gets credit, or, the whatever laudits were sort of laid at Nike for this, is just sort of like, we're trying to embrace it at some lower level in what's going on in the space. Like Adidas has also gotten a lot of credit. I literally have a tab open to see if I can get the Adidas mint today. So, but I also collect sneakers. So, like, it makes sense to me, that I know how sneakerheads are, and I know why they would care about this in a ton of ways. But, I do think, much like engineers, artists, et cetera, are having to reimagine, recreate, reinvent sort of the way that they interact with the world and produce their art. I think brands are going to also have to do that. And that process is usually painful. We've been around long enough to see brands try to suffer their way through being relevant. And usually they still fundamentally misunderstand that being relevant just means by doing good things and being part of the community and not telling it what to do. And so I think, like, one of the bigger challenges that brands are probably going to have as we move into sort of this, next phase of things, is that as the community becomes more empowered, has more of a voice, and has more, impact in sort of making decisions, I don't know how brands are going to adopt those principles per se, right? Just for context, for imagine, like, my last company, Shoot, we were a user-generated content platform, help brands curate, user-generated content from their fans and work with their fans, did rights management, all that stuff. But they never really wanted to listen to what the fans were saying in the media we were collecting. They just sort of wanted to pin it up on a wall, right? And inverting your organization to sort of be more customer-led is a thing that startups tend to preach often, but you don't hear it as often. From the brands just have a different modality. They're a larger scale, usually, or essentially the large brands for sure. So I think there's an opportunity to reinvent here. There's going to be a lot of strategies, to Seam's point. I think some people will be acquired, and there will be lots of roll-ups of sort of groups and organizations that are creating a lot of value here. That is only going to get you so far, though, right? Like, every day there's new innovation. There's new interpretations of how to do this stuff. So, Yeah, I do see Ben here. Ben usually has some good thoughts. If he wants to come up, feel free to raise your hand, Ben.
Yeah, Ben Metcalf is a dear friend, VC, and also he's behind a new startup.
Mnemonic.
Mnemonic? Yeah,
NFT and analysis, I guess, or kind of. I don't know. I'm probably butchering it. It's very cool.
Greg, but Greg, you're talking about like the sneakerhead generation. Like that's actually a big market, right? And like, yeah, you're starting to see more. Oh, and we have Ben, so we'll get him on stage. But you're starting to see like people are buying more shoes, and obviously seeing a lot of value. So maybe to kind of increase that the revenue, Nike's like, hey, with Artifact, we're gonna now you can do, instead of just physical shoe drops, you do NFT drops, right? And you can you can sell different variations of that same shoe, even more so because it's just digital art. It costs less to produce, like actually create. Then it goes up in value, and then you kind of bring that, with the power of with NFTs, you can bring people back into as a community through whatever Nike's whole community thing is. I don't know if they're using Nike Plus or anything like that, but
I have some thoughts on that. But Ben, welcome up. Also,
hello.
How are you?
I thought I'd stop up because you're butchering the.
Well, that was on purpose because I knew it would goad you into coming up.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. How's it going? We begin. I don't want to talk about my startup, although it's awesome.
No, please, actually, because it's a very important tool in the ecosystem. So at least give everyone the 2-second version of it.
All right. Well, the 2-second version is we ingest and have ingested every NFT, every piece of metadata, and every transaction that has ever happened from block zero of every NFT on Ethereum, and very soon practically every other chain. And we provide a queryable data layer, which you can use for analytics, but there are many other things you can use it for as well. You can build marketplaces, and these brands can build and are starting to build propositions on top of it. So it forms a queryable layer that can be used for a lot of different things. So we do the hard work so you don't have to. Yeah, actually, I'm very excited about it. I think it's going to be even bigger than my last startup. So I'm super excited. In addition to being a VC in this space, I really like so I don't know anything. I'm not a consumer guy because I don't buy sneakers, and I'm kind of weird when it comes to my choice of fashion. So I don't really follow a lot of it.
They make sneakers in black, Ben.
They do. And I love my Puma sneakers that I get on discount from the Puma outlet website for $25. So that kind of tells you where I'm at with sneakers. But I think what I'm telling LPs and people in my networks is the Adidas partnering with Bored Ape Yacht Club, and now Artifact going to Nike. I think this just confirms, if people are looking for inflection points, that the notion that brands are going to ultimately sell digital items, and therefore the value of their logo being on a random t-shirt we always knew was kind of questionable. Like, why is a plain black t-shirt worth $5 and one with Nike written on it is worth $30 or whatever? The fact that this is going to go on digital items, which obviously costs nothing to produce, and therefore the value is created just from the association of a logo, is absolutely now going to happen. I think we all probably guessed it, but if people were looking for the inflection point, these two announcements this week, I think, put any kind of people on the periphery, or people who like me don't get it otherwise. I think you can see this is going to happen. And I think it opens up a whole interesting world. I was chatting to some people who are involved in the Dolce & Gabbana NFT drop for some virtual items. And that's really interesting because they are also using their brand to essentially do the same thing. And yet they obviously have a Lux brand, which means they need the scarcity, whereas everybody owns probably something made by Nike at this point. And so it's interesting to also see how brands, and I'll shut up in a second here, how brands at different points in the Lux scale where they want greater scarcity are going to participate in this without devaluing their brand. Obviously, the Nike sneakers, the expensive ones, are scarce, which is why they held value, whereas me going and buying a $20 pair of Nikes out of the outlet store and no one cares. But how are these brands going to deal with scarcity? And the fact that there is some scarcity built into the system is probably the thing, in my opinion, that has pushed them into being happy to do this, as opposed to in the past when there wasn't the scarcity component.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and you know, Ken had pointed out this thing earlier also, Ben, and I'm sure you've seen StockX and the secondary sales market, for example. There's a few problems in the sneaker world that I think apply in generally to luxury goods as well. Obviously, sort of authenticity has been one challenge, right? There's a lot of fakes and things like that out there. There's always been the secondary problem, and I've always wondered this. You know, Nike never participated in the secondary sales, which is actually a tremendous opportunity still for them, even if it was just for a verification role or something else. But there's still stuff there. But then obviously the metaverse and all of the sort of virtual renditions of your physical goods, maybe that you purchase, or like for purely virtual goods that maybe manifest in as physical goods secondarily, I think is another huge space for them. And I think you're absolutely right that because everything can be limited edition essentially, and everything can be numbered, it gives them a fantastic way to sort of do a lot of crazy things now.
And to your point, Greg, that crazy thing is like, I think right now, I think there's, in any case, there's always like, oh, what if you could, Nike did this with, the celebrity or paired up with, had this built that Back to the Future shoe, right? It's like before, realistically, that might not have been possible. Obviously that the Back to the Future, the laceless shoes is now a reality. But had that not been a reality, it's like, oh, well, here's what it would have looked like as digital art, and you can own it, right? And so there's a lot more creativity that Nike can put into shoes that may never physically exist, but that people are clamoring for, right? It's like, what if Captain America had Nike shoes on during the Avengers, right? What would that have looked like? And then you could certainly have marketed that. Well, very well could, but some people may be asking for it. Not me, but I'm just saying, it's like, what if, a lot of these what ifs could have, that could be like, oh, now let's see what they actually look like, and they can auction them off as limited items or limited run NFTs for people, and kind of bringing it back to that.
Yeah.
And
I also think the opportunity to collaborate goes up significantly, right? So,
yep.
Like your product being interpreted now, not just by the Nike design studio, but by, tens of millions of designers. And then basically imagine people being able to pitch or present these as an opportunity. And then Nike saying, we like this one, we like this one, whatever maybe. By the way, the Air Mags from 2011 are currently available for $18,499.
But it's also less material that you need. Like, you don't actually have to produce that physical thing, so it's less cost for Nike to produce these type of things, right? So it's like, hey, maybe I want to do an artist series for whatever. You could do it as an NFT or some digital art.
So Ken, I think like that's an interesting argument, I guess. But I think like what I would probably imagine is that even though producing a physical good is always going to probably be more expensive, what's going to likely happen is there will be new kinds of innovation that still go into actually producing the digital version of things as well, right? So, I think CM has a comment, but I was just going to say, like,
yeah,
then they're spending it on coding and development and like algorithm development, right? And then also like rendering methods, and I think there will still be innovation. Obviously, it's still going to be way more capital efficient than producing a physical good. But yeah, I wouldn't assume that it cost goes to zero per se.
Oh no, you're right.
Seem, what's up?
Yeah, 100%. Because then there's the cost of just housing all this great tech to be working on the chain all the time, and man.
But it's the cloud, man. It's the cloud. Cloud's supposed to make it cheaper.
I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said it. Let me say number one, especially regarding attitudes of the consumer to NFTs. I think it's all about education. When Pepsi launched their NFT, a lot of folks looked at it and they couldn't see the appeal. Heck, I wanted to see Pepsi Man return. I didn't see that. But see, finding ways to connect with your audience in meaningful manners is the key to tokenization. If you can't, in the briefest second, like as Nike did with Artifact, a shoe company giving you shoes, very simple, right? I'm extremely bullish on how our technology is going to enable us for social experiences, as Meta kind of puts it out there, but I'm a gamer. Like I'm a member of the world's most documented esports team. I'm an administrative member, and I'm looking at things like a computer game. So what are ways in which our tokens could impact our users so we can retain them, so user retention, but also have them an enjoyable experience. I know that there are going to be some great technology from like the NVIDIA's Cloud XR, which makes it so that you can just offload a bunch of processing power onto a cloud, and that could make your GPUs kind of useless in a couple of years, to like crazy innovations. And I'm curious too, as how this time, like yesterday, today, whenever Artifact was acquired, it is indicative of the consumers needing to actually do more research, to get involved, to learn more about NFTs. Because to me, it is incredibly scary to know all this great technology is happening, all these changes, but folks are immediately turned off because of their refusal to listen. Similarly to what happened in 2008 and in 1995.
Well, this happened in Discord too, Seem. When Discord, we had this story on a few weeks ago, but when Discord sort of shared that screenshot of like a wallet connect inside of Discord, like all the gamers lost their shit. But part of that was just their rejection of like the opportunity to presence of scams, right? Like, amongst other factors. But I think it was just interesting. Yeah, we're gonna obviously have to move past this. But let's remember, I guess, scams are gonna always exist as long as humans are involved. Like there were tons of internet scams. Anybody remember pop under ads, right? Like all that bullshit that we had to suffer through for ages and ages, right?
Those are still there.
What?
Those are still there.
But you still have this stuff happening, right? Like, so like we're never going to really completely elude all that behavior. But I do think some of the early trappings of the crypto world maybe still are leaving a bad taste for many people. And obviously all the rug pulls that have happened just don't help, right? But there's been a lot of positive movement for sure. And I don't think that I think we're making progress. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Well, we are at time, and as always, we didn't get to most of our stories here, but I think there's a lot of news around NFTs that we'll certainly be talking about in future episodes here. But
so Ken, just to share, next year we will have a new show with a couple of our former regulars, which will be like our Web3 community show. So I see Arnold in the audience here in the studio, and I know Abhinav is going to do it, and maybe you'll be able to join as well. I think we'll probably do it on Tuesdays, but we'll try to be here to support folks who are onboarding as well into the process and cover some more of the news from the Web3 side of things. Just to wrap up though, before we go, tune in next year. We already are booked. We have the folks from LinkedIn on January 5th. We have Marina Gilko, the YouTube creator that was just raised money from Slow Ventures, on January 12th. January 19th, Tony, are you still in the audience? He was here before, but he's going to be here talking about diffusion.me. January 26th, we have our friend Abhinav talking about his startup, YourFeed. And then February 2nd, we'll have Joe Fernandez, another friend of ours, coming to talk about some of what he's doing now, as well as sort of where he thinks the world would be if Klout still existed. We are still booking actually a few more guests for February, but if you're interested in being on the show, head over to createdeconomy.com/guest list, and you can find out about how to get on the show next year. So Ken, with that,
but quick thank yous to Ben for joining us, Shefo for joining us, for Seem for joining us, and Greg, thank you for putting together the show and bringing me in this year. It's been really great. We'll be doing more of these shows next year, obviously, looking to make it bigger and better. And I'm going to be doing some Twitter Spaces next week and the week after, because why not talk to more people?
By the way, we didn't announce this, but we are in the Spark program. So for this show, Ken got accepted. There's some other people in there, so we're in that program. And by the way, I'm getting very close to launching what Web3 Discord would look like. So if you are curious about that, shoot me a DM. I'd love to show you an example of what that would feel like. It'll be
Cool.
NFT based to start with, and you can launch a new community on the blockchain on top of any NFT. So feel free to pop me a note. We'd love to chat. So with that, everyone, we will see you soon. Have a great holiday, Christmas, New Year, whatever you may be celebrating. We look forward to it, and we will be back next year with an all new format, branding, all the stuff. We're working on all these things behind the scenes, but we're looking forward to telling you. Bye, everybody.
Alrighty. See you.